Okay, we will call the March 18th board work session meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements and executive session report. There was an executive session held today, immediately prior to this meeting, for purposes of contract negotiations with the Teamsters. Other announcements: the public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording this meeting, and it will be rebroadcast. By way of attendance, all board members are present. That takes us to item number 5, scheduled speakers and presentations. Dr. Zerbe.
I just want to say and congratulate the board for making the decision to make an investment in our planetarium. As you saw here this evening from our presentation, I believe it's a wise investment that'll pay dividends in the long term. So thank you very much, and you should give yourself a pat on the back for that. Our next item, 5.2, MESPA update. Mr. Harney.
Yes, I'm going to do a very brief PowerPoint on the tentative agreement. He says, hopefully. Okay, as we've talked to you before, we've had a tentative agreement in place for a little bit now. Mid-January, through negotiations process, we reached a tentative agreement with MESPA. On the 26th of February, they voted to approve that. There were several votes that were canceled. That was the middle of our Snowmageddon. There was about 3 or 4 meetings that they tried to have, and they kept canceling them. So unfortunately, we missed the window to bring this to you in February, so that's why we're doing it now. It's a 3-year agreement. Runs us through the end of the 16-17 school year. There were 3 basic language changes. The first one has to do with subcontracting language. We have subcontracting language in right now prior to the change that allows us to subcontract at will. We agreed to this change to allow them a 90-day period to present a proposal should we decide to outsource some of their program. After quite a bit of discussion, we realized this is something we would do anyway. We wouldn't unilaterally come in on a Friday and tell them that they were done on a Monday and that we were going to outsource. We would always give them an opportunity to do some sort of counter proposal. So we didn't think that was of much impact to the contract. We added 2 holidays. They're for the full-time 12-month employees, both Martin Luther King Day and Easter Monday. And we added 1 personal day for those employees who are here 15 years. They'll get 1 additional day. There's the health care for those 3-year period. You're going to start to recognize those numbers. Those are the same numbers that we agreed to with our teaching staff MEA contract. So that's the exact same health care program. And we agreed to 2% per year added to their base. And when we factor in the costs, the changes with our health care, their increased premium share, as well as the plans that we're going through the consortium, we reached an overall average of 1.22% for the life of the contract per year. As you recall, we met several times as a group to get board consensus on where we wanted to end up in this contract, and I think we hit that pretty well. Any questions on this agreement? Nope. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
So we will be bringing this for approval on the 25th.
Thank you.
On March 25th. So the next item, 5.3, budget update. Mr. Whiteleather.
All right. Well, we had the planetarium presentation, but you're going to be excited to see I did a snazzy little PowerPoint here on our budget and just some updates relative to
The globe was a nice time.
Yeah.
Are you insinuating mine was not snazzy?
Pretty much.
Promising dimension.
So basically what I wanted to do is just give you some updates relative to our budget. Obviously, a lot of things are in play now between now and June, but as we look at some of the highlights of our budget as we look at the last couple of weeks, one of the things we wanted to do is just touch upon where we're looking as an organization. One of the big things we want to do is look at our sustainability. What that means is not so much looking at next year as a single year, but looking at the next 5 years. What impacts are going to be happening to the school district externally, internally, all the factors that play into there. Special education, charter schools, PSERS cost increases, et cetera. All those things play into how we want to look at our budget. So it's not so much looking at it as 14-15, it's looking at it from 14-15 to 18-19 fiscal years. So there was a lot of emphasis on that for a multitude of reasons. Getting down below, as we looked at that, we developed administratively a 5-year budget model. And one of the things we did is look back. A lot of predictors based on future projections are based on historical audited information. So we look back at the last 11 years of audited information to get some trends. How are things going? Special education, how's that trending versus the other part of the budget? Healthcare, PSERS, et cetera. All those things help feed into this model that we'll be previewing here at the end of the presentation. And then finally on this slide, Act 1. Obviously, Act 1 has been talked about pretty extensively, but just the part I want to really emphasize regarding Act 1 is it really places a limitation on the school district to pay for operations on an ongoing basis if there was a situation in which you had a shortfall. Act 1 really caps your ability to make any type of shortfall on a year-to-year basis. So if we had a deficit in this year and we tried to make up for that in 14-15, it'd be quite difficult because obviously you have all your ongoing expenditures that increase year over year, plus you have under this scenario a shortfall. So it becomes very difficult to address those under the Act 1 constraints. What are those budgetary impacts that are happening for Methacton School District? We've talked about PSERS, the rate increase relative to that. For next year, we're looking at 21.4%, which is equate to about $9.9 million. But if you look forward, which again is sustainability, looking at the long term, the 5 years, in 18-19, that rate's going to be 30.14% based on projections, or $16.3 million. To give you a little bit of historical reference, looking back to 2001, 2002, the employer contribution rate was a little over 1%. So we've gone from 1% to 21.4%, and you can see how that equates to significant dollars coming for that particular item. Special education, again, I spoke about historical audited information, gives you a good basis of how things are trending. As you can see, our special education is growing at 8.29%. That really equates to about double the rest of our budget. So high cost area for our organization, and something obviously we have to keep a close eye on, both short and long term. And then lastly, charter schools. Big increase for us. Back in 2010, 2011, we were spending about $600,000. For next year, we're going to be budgeting slightly over $1 million. What are the changes since you approved our preliminary budget back on February 18th? Just touching on some of these, obviously these aren't finalized numbers, but just to give you an idea as to what updates are coming down the road. At the very top there, I've listed what our budget was on revenue side as you approved it on the 18th of February, and everything listed here as well as the corresponding dollar amounts are either positives or negatives depending upon what's happened on our revenue side. And just going down through these real quickly, the state ABG, which is the accountability block grant, that is the money that was the governor's proposal to increase funding for that particular line item. Obviously there's a lot yet to be finalized on that, as well as legislative approval. So whether that becomes reality or not is subject to, obviously, the finalization of the governor's budget. Some other areas, our EIT tax, doing very well, increasing our projected revenues for this year and also for next year. Transportation subsidy, this would be if we would go the contracting route. Obviously, our bus fleet would be updated, and the state reimburses you based on the age of your fleet as well as miles with students on there. So using that criteria, we could realize some additional dollars. Delinquent tax, again, another area for us that has seen some growth. Transfer tax, this is when somebody sells a home. A portion of those proceeds go to the school district as well as the municipality where the home is located at the time of sale. Assessments, tax assessments and collection percentage. We've recently had some successful tax appeals, which have led to an increase in our revenue collection for real estate taxes, which is reflected here. And as we look down, IDEA funding, as well as Title I and Title II, the federal government has rolled back some of its sequestration cuts for next year, and we're reflecting bringing our funding back up to those pre-sequestration or reduction levels. Interest earnings, we've been very aggressively seeking banks with greater interest earnings, and very happy to see that right now we're running about triple the amount of dollars that we collected in interest earnings from 12-13 to the current year. Needless to say, the interest earnings have gone down dramatically from where they were a few years ago, but obviously any extra dollars are good. As well as some areas where we're going down a little bit. Obviously, interim taxes are showing a slight decrease. That's any time there's a sale of a home that would not correspond with the regular fiscal year. There's a period of time where the person would pay a portion of the taxes at settlement for the home that they would purchase or commercial property, wherever the case may be. And then health services reimbursement, rounding out here. Health services reimbursement reflects money that we get from the state for providing nursing, our dental exams, our physician, etc. So as you can see, overall, we're reflecting almost about a $900,000 increase relative to our revenues. And again, these are just based on the latest known information at this juncture. On the expenditure side, again, same format at the very top. These were the numbers you approved at February 18th. And then where are we at now? Obviously, special education spoke about pretty significant cost center for us. We're reflecting an additional allocation of dollars, again, based on tuition payments for both special education and charter schools. Professional services, again, relative to our special education, anytime we contract out for any type of professional need, we have a cost associated with that, which we're seeing an increase to, and based on our trends, reflecting an increase relative to our budget. North Monco Techno Career Center, we just received our budget from them after your approval of our preliminary budget. As you can see, that increase not related to operational, but related to the debt service portion of their budget. Supplies, again, focused on facilities based on expenditure trends. Some of the good news here, I say for the bottom, medical. We, through the Bucks Montgomery consortium, are seeing a very significant decrease in both our medical and our prescription rates for next year. And as you can see, I've highlighted here, our medical is down by 3.2%, and our prescription is down by 9%. So very good to see these numbers going down, because we all know the cost of healthcare and certain impacts we all share in that. Special education, one of the highlights here is legal judgments. We've seen a decline in that area for the current fiscal year, so that's one good point to make relative to that particular area. Decreased utilities resulting from our cooperative purchasing that we have had for the last few years. We've seen some decreases in that area as well, and that's certainly a benefit to us by reducing that as well. And then lastly, equipment. Special education facilities, we've seen expenditure trends declining slightly, so that's certainly a good thing for us. Overall, as you can see, we're about a $20,000 increase overall on our expenditure side, so not too bad. What have we done in the last few years to offset some of our expenditure increases as an organization? as you can see, just highlighting a couple of things we've done. Aramark, back in 2009, 2010, the general fund was contributing $380,000 towards our operation to make it whole. They needed that amount of money to balance their operations, pay for their expenses. Currently, that amount that the general fund contributes is zero. So obviously, a very significant turnaround. Our activity fee, both for middle school and high school students, you can see we're generating $77,000 in last year's budget and $62,300 thus far to date. STS, when we settled our MEA contract, we they agreed to contracting out of all of our subs, including our long-term substitutes. That savings alone is $175,000 for the school district. Our early retirement incentive, again, strategically offering our retirement incentive to staff that are at the high end of the scale, replacing those with lower cost teachers, very significant savings for us. As you may recall, we had 19 teachers that took retirement at the end of last year. We only replaced 13 of those positions. So again, a great opportunity for us to save dollars. The Bucks Montgomery Health Consortium, joining that in this year alone, if you may recall, when we were looking at a renewal rate from Independence Blue Cross staying fully insured versus what we were going to get as a cost for joining the Bucks Montgomery Consortium, we saved $900,000 in this current year's budget. And for next year, we're projecting with all of the savings from day one to present for renewal, we're going to save another $500,000. So again, a very, very good move on our part to join that consortium and reap the benefits of reducing our costs in that area. Reduced building budgets. In last year's budget, Dr. Miller and I worked together along with the administration to reduce building budgets by $10,000 each. And then lastly, reducing professional staff. I know this is somewhat hard to read here, but we had 445 teachers in 10-11. We have 422 now. So we're down by 23 teachers. So again, reducing our cost relative to looking both short and long term. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is just highlight that even before, back in September, before Dr. Zerbe came on board, he was contacting me and saying, hey, Stu, we really got to put together a long-term budget model. So what we did is we put together a budget model that I'm going to bring up for you and just kind of illustrate some of the things we're looking at and just some of the areas that you should be aware of as we're looking at our budget, not only for 14-15, but that and beyond. I guess that shows. What I try to do here and what I showed our finance committee last week is here's basically all of our current year's projection to date as well as the next couple of years. Now, what I did is I took our expenditure trends, again, utilizing that historical information, trending forward, and basically what this does is it shows you right now, if we did absolutely nothing and nothing changed from today, here's what we'll be looking at as a budgetary short for 14-15, 15-16, so on and so forth. And you can see obviously the big ugly number out here at 18-19 of almost $13 million. What I did here is showed basically the same information, but this includes a line for tax increase. So if we look at just that one line item there, we have the capability down here below in this green line to basically manipulate that information. So if we would be looking at, for instance, doing like a 2% tax increase or a 2.5% tax increase, you can see how that reflects on the budget. I'll do that right now. So again, you can see how the number changed. Here's doing nothing, and here's doing a 2.5% tax increase. So again, what the purpose of this is to help board, help community, help everybody, is because this will be a publicly shared document following this board meeting, is to help people understand what are the impacts of short-term decisions on long-term views. So if we did a 0 here, we obviously would need to make up the short of this amount on next year's budget. So you can see how difficult you would have of a situation trying to make up your short when you start compounding these numbers. So it's important for us as we look at things, basically every item in our budget, every operational area that we can control, it's important for us to look at how these impacts us relative to our ability to pay for them on the long term. You know, we've talked about the Shenandoah property and the tax appeal on that. You know, the impacts of how that can be a very beneficial back to the school district relative to what we're doing now as far as escrowing those dollars away from our revenue side, but also looking at other areas of our operation as well. But I guess Finance Committee felt this was important that we share this with everyone to show you how the impacts of our decisions would be relative to looking at long term. And the nice thing about this is it's very interactive. You can actually go on here and plug and play your numbers, and you'll basically see the impacts of how everything will play out. So you can see if I just do an example here, is just do 2.5 each one of the years. So as you can see right here, I mean, just using a 2.5%, you can see the difference in our deficit under this projection model went from almost $13 million to $4 million. Not to say that's an insignificant number, but it's obviously much more manageable than almost a $13 million short. So you could look at other areas of your budget, other operational needs, so forth, that would be able to perhaps address that smaller shortfall than obviously this bigger number here. So again, just to help everyone, you know, relative to looking both short-term in our budget, long-term, the impacts and the associated, you know, tax increases that would affect our budget, both 14, 15, and beyond. So that basically wraps up my presentation. I didn't know if anybody has any questions. All right, not everyone at once, please. All right.
So is this whole presentation going online?
Yes. Yes, everything will be shared, and this document will actually, whomever will be able to go on and actually plug in numbers and see how things affect our operation.
Nice, thank you.
I'll make a comment.
Yes.
Thank you. This is something that I've been asking for 4 years.
That's what we said.
We all said that 4 years ago, we were looking for this.
And this is the one thing that I could never understand was, how do you run a district and not look 5 years ahead and understand what's happening? And finally, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And still had a quick question. Those 5 years, that's anticipated PSERS contributions
Yes.
and are based on our historical data,
Yes.
including the salaries that we have locked in so far.
Yes. So, you know, you could look at like multitude of things. You could look at like early retirement incentives. You could look at doing other things relative to looking at these numbers. So again, it gives you that long-term perspective on seeing that and saying, what can we do maybe in 2 years that could help us addressing these numbers, as well as other items. So yes, very, very good point relative to looking at all of the facets that come into play.
If I could just mention one thing, if we take a look at our original budget back on February 18th, we said we were about $4 million short. Two of that $4 million was the PSERS piece. So what's important to realize that, you know, even in this current governor's race, as well as either, you know, bills from the Senate side and from the House side, this issue of PSERS will be addressed. I really feel confident it'll be addressed in one manner or another.
It'll have to be.
It has to be.
Tenable. I mean,
There's no way out. I've shared with the Finance Committee that there's a PASA, the Administrators Association, basically has a model that says if everything's, you know, stays the same with those PSERS increases, in 4 years there'll be one school district that will be able to pass their budget within index based on those increases. One. So with that said, there's certainly a rush, not only politically, but just operationally, to address this issue. So there's several things that we may see coming down, and I had this discussion with our administrators today, It's simply the fact that, one, there's bills on the floor that will address new hires and the rate of employer contributions to them, and that impact will be slow coming because districts that may be growing will see that impact a little sooner than those districts that will have to wait till few retire and then we bring new staff on. At a greater impact, and certainly education-wide, is the one that will affect all of the current employees as well as future employees. So there's many renditions of bills on the floor, and then I'm assuming on both sides of the aisle with regards to the governor's race, they'll have their own renditions of how to fix this particular issue. So I don't want to say I feel confident, I just see there's no other way out, but they have to fix it. So
It's
that will
seems to
impact
win
these
now,
numbers.
yeah.
So I just don't want to paint the wrong picture, but I certainly can't predict what those numbers will be other than using the data that Stuart has put together today based on what we know specifically. So I just want you to be aware of that our expenditures could change significantly if the PISA system is changed. So that's just one thing to be aware of. Any other questions for?
Just a practical one. That
Yes.
will be an Excel document
Yes.
that we'll be able to load on our computer. Online.
You'll be able to download it.
Download.
Yes, you will be able to download it. I guess the only question, and I'm sorry, I'm not a tech person, but I just think you need the Microsoft Excel version.
You would need the viewer on your computer to
Yeah.
view it.
But this will be a publicly available document.
Okay.
So next steps on budget, expenditure review, et cetera.
Right. Basically, from this point forward, what we're going to be doing is, obviously, Finance Committee and administration will be continuing to meet relative to any updates we have. Obviously, Superintendent, Mr. Harney, myself, continue to work with the administrators relative to fine-tuning budgets. Obviously, we've gone a long way from our preliminary budget, where we were looking at about a 4.5% tax increase. We're significantly below that now, and certainly we continue to work towards bringing to you, hopefully by the end of this document, that will be obviously acceptable to you, but also reflecting our operational needs, which is obviously the very difficult balancing between the two. But obviously we've done a lot. We've gone a long way in just a few weeks. With the expectation is we're gonna come even further and hopefully have a good document for you here by the time we get a final budget in June.
Thank you.
Thanks.
No other speakers or presentations? Okay, then we'll move on to item number 6, voting items for next week. Dr. Zerbe again.
We're going to ask the board to approve the minutes from the 18th and the 26th. We're going to review the fiscal item of bills, the treasurer report, the special education cost sharing plan, the tentative agreement with MESPA as it was presented here this evening, the student activity status for Arcola cross country and track team. Stuart, can you just give the board an update on that particular item? Number 5, the activity status for Arcola cross country team. It was a student activity account.
Request, they don't have an account.
Right. What they're looking to do is they're looking to create a student activity account. Obviously, with that, you need to have a student representative, you need to have an advisor, you need to have bylaws relative to getting that started. So in the discussion initially to get it up and running, we decided to inform them relative to what they need in order to establish it. Anytime you create an activity account, the intent and purpose has to go back to the kids. You can't create like an activity account to have something for the teachers. It has to be directly focused to the kids. So there was a little bit of a process involved in getting that up and running. All that's been communicated, and we're basically at the point where we're ready to
We have
put things in
many of
place.
these accounts for different organizations. Just so happened that this group didn't have one, and they're moving through the process.
So they don't all use that one big activity account that we have,
Like the principal's account?
well, no, we have an activity account that...
Yes.
And I thought all the sports and home and school and everything all ran their accounts through that. So if home and school was paying for a bus trip, the district would pay it and out of that account, and then you would be reimbursed by home and school into that account.
Yes, but there is one, bank account, but it represents multiple student activities.
Right. And Arcola wants their own?
Well, this would just be another student activity account added to the...
Within that big account?
Yes.
Correct.
Oh,
yes,
okay, I get
Correct.
it.
Nothing major is changing here. I just wanted to
I
bring your
didn't
attention,
understand
because that may not have been something that we explained either in the finance committee or at any other time. I just wanted to make you aware
You know,
of that.
one of the other things that
It's not unusual.
we were talking about now that we're setting up this 501c3 for home and school was that maybe somewhere down the road, in fact, we purposely didn't name it the district home and school district council or coordinating council. We just called it the Methacton Coordinating Council because in some school districts, North Penn for one, that's where they run through all of their booster clubs and things too.
Okay.
Through that 501c3.
Okay.
But we don't intend to do that this year.
And item 6, we hope to be able to come to you with a recommendation for a bid award for the high school athletic field project, construction owner's representative, and fundraising consultant. Just to give you an idea, today at 3 p.m. we had 2 general contracting bids and 1 electrical bid. They're currently being under review. We hope to be able to be meeting with David Horn, our architect, later this week to be able to get that information in a format that we can share with you in advance so that we can have some meaningful discussion on March 25th.
I couldn't hear. You had how many of what?
We had 2 general contracting bids and we had 1 electrical bid.
And was 3 o'clock the deadline for
The 3
submission?
o'clock was the deadline today. That's correct.
And the other 2 bids that were received last time, I think one was electrical, right? one
And
was
plumbing.
And one was plumbing.
Yeah.
And so they're still being...
The electrical, the electrical and the GC, we bid out again. The plumbing is one that we will bring to the table as well on March 25th.
From the original bid process.
From the original bid, yes. We also like to bring to you the construction owner's representative, given the fact that we award a bid that evening. In addition to that, we'd also then bring to the board a recommendation for hiring and fundraising consultants. Just to give you an idea where we're at with that particular process, and I'll jump back to number 7. I know that construction owner's rep, we had a property meeting just this week, and I believe that the committee will have a recommendation for the board on the 25th. Number 8, a fundraising consultant. We're in the last stage of doing the reference calls for the 2 remaining vendors, and we hope to be able to provide that information back to the committee in order to make a recommendation on the 25th as well.
David, have we done reference calls on the owner's rep for the Turk project?
We have, yes. Item 6.3, personnel and resignations. We'll be asking for permission to approve these as they're listed. If you go on to the next page, the back. If we go on to uncompensated leave and personnel or supplemental contracts, we'll be asking you to approve these as they're listed. 6.9, the classified substitute list and the volunteers, 6.10 as listed. 6.11, new textbooks for review. I'd just like to turn this part of the conversation over to Mary, if you want to just touch briefly on those 3 textbooks.
The Criminal Justice in Action, this is a new course that had been approved in the fall, I suppose. So we now have that textbook. The Assis Adise is a replacement. It is basically a continuation, replacing the Spanish series. So previously, it was approved for the first part of the series, and now it's continuing on. And then the AP Spanish, I just need to note in that this is the only one that we had in the office when the agenda went to print. There were, however, a total of 3 books that are a part of this, and so we do now have those other 2 books, and so they will be available for review as well.
Thank you. Any questions on those?
Oh, we had approved 5 courses, I think, back when we did that in December. So there are 2 new courses here. Does that mean we're not getting the other 3 courses that we approved?
I believe the one was advanced guitar, or something related to
Yeah.
virtual guitar. I don't have it in front of me, but that was one.
I
So
have
that
them
one.
here.
I'm sorry?
I do have them
Good.
here. One was, one was guitar ensemble, and the new materials that were requested for that was a mobile PC laptop lab, and I don't know where we are with that. But
We're still going through that process as part of our budgetary review.
And then the other one was current issues in environmental science 1, and there were no new materials requested or needed for that one. So the course is still going.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the criminal justice class? It says that this is a new class. Are they going to keep the dual enrollment class, or are we going to have this replace it? Because we have one currently that's taught through Montco. So are we keeping that, or are we getting rid of that?
No, okay, there was an interest survey. 80% of students were interested in having a course of this type. There is a dual enrollment course offered by Montgomery County, but apparently it is not as rigorous because it's offered only 3 times per week per semester versus this class that's offered 6 days per cycle per semester. So they feel like they're getting more from this class as opposed to the community college course.
Okay, so that will
So this will replace it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I just want to bring to the attention of the board that, with Mary's arrival, there was quite a significant, and with any, coming into any new position, there's quite a significant number of tasks that one needs to undertake. One of them that we've specifically agreed on and identifying is to identify where we are with our curriculum in regards to book cycles, curriculum revisions, and those things are currently in the works to lay out a plan that we can then bring back to the board and share with you. A lot of what you see here related to these programs are a result of things that were sitting on the burner ready to go as I arrived, and those, as we move through this process. So in all fairness, you just need to know that we're in a process of getting this curriculum rewriting process and the textbook recycling process in order, so that it typically goes on a 5-year period, and also making sure that our curriculum offerings are in line with not only our state standards, but in line with what makes sense fiscally. If we look down at item 6.12
Can I ask a
program.
question about that?
Sure.
If we're in the midst of reviewing all that, and from what you just said about the dual enrollment class, that what we're going to offer is going to be more rigorous than a college class, are we going to review the rest of the dual enrollment classes that we have to make sure that they are, I guess, the level that they should be, or is that something that we don't
That's certainly
do?
something I can look at.
I mean, that
Excuse
just
me.
rings a little bell that if you're saying that we're going to teach a high school class to be more rigorous than a college class, I'm wondering if we should be looking at things.
Well, first, I want to be clear that that wasn't my word. That
No,
was,
I
that
know,
was
I
on
know. I know.
Okay. Because I mean, sure, I think that's a fair question.
And that is part of,
and
I mean,
probably
those
does
classes
warrant-
are
yes.
part of
Yeah, that
our
would be-
overall curriculum
That would
offerings.
be part of, yeah, at this point, tomorrow I'm having my first meeting, oddly enough, with social studies, with the coordinators as a follow-up to our curriculum council meeting from a couple weeks ago, to get an idea from every curricular area, kind of where they are, what, the types of things that have been happening with their curriculum, what they're looking for, and, and what's going to be the best path to take. So that will be part of the conversation then.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just ask another question? This comes to about $30,000, these 3, and I noticed in that report you gave to us a few weeks ago that we'd spent significantly more than that on textbooks in previous years. Is this going to be the total for the textbooks, do we think, or are we going to have another round of questions?
No, I don't see any additional textbooks coming before you for next school year. We would, are there any others that are in?
The only additions on here would be with the AP Spanish with those other couple
Right,
of
with
books
those
that
other
are
books,
part
right.
of it, but that's not terribly significant, so.
Okay.
Well, and what about, I know there are some schools that are starting, at least private schools, maybe not necessarily public schools, that are starting to be mostly virtual, no books at all. Like the libraries are even being cleared out. So is that something that we are moving towards, or is that something far down the road?
Let me just jump back real quick to the question before this, if we could. So I want to make sure that we answer each question at a time. So do we have any additional textbooks scheduled to be purchased in the budget?
The book total that you saw on the, I guess it was Friday update,
Yeah.
represented all the books throughout the entire organization. So it not only was curriculum and instructions department, but also each individual buildings.
So like libraries and things like that?
Libraries.
Okay.
And for example, when a building, after a building initially implements, like curriculum instruction would initially do the purchase of like a new textbook series, but like replacement textbooks, things of that sort, like they had 5 new kids move in, those would be the responsibility of the buildings. So there's cost, other than just curriculum instruction relative to that number that you saw, which include everything.
And we don't need to approve that textbook, we simply need to approve the expenditure of the money.
Correct. Once you approve the budget, you approve the expenditure.
Right.
And so Kathleen, back to your question, if you wouldn't mind just repeating that for me, please, I'd appreciate that.
I'm just wondering, there seems to be a trend moving forward, at least in some of the private school areas, where they're getting rid of their books, handbooks. So are we moving towards getting more e-books? Or are we going to have a combination of both? Is that something that we see changing going forward?
It's going to depend on our technology, on what we have going with our technology. I would be a very strong proponent of that.
You would be?
But I would be, yes. But again, it depends. You have to have.
You gotta have, every kid's gotta have an iPad
Availability,
or a
yeah.
reader or something.
Yeah.
Well, in theory, the concept, I think that Troy has been trying to move the district forward and bring your own device will help lend us to being able to provide access to more of those resources without requiring us to provide the actual end user equipment to do that. So I think, it's a process. It's not something that we can just jump right into. And in addition to that, not every subject area will lend itself well to having, an electronic textbook versus having something that children can hold and touch and feel. So I think as part of this overall review of where we are as an organization with our curriculum, it encompasses everything from materials to the way we teach and how we teach, and we're only so far into the Dimensions of Learning, which is a program of instructional delivery, and we're only in stage 3 of 5, I believe, at this point. So we have certainly some room to grow with this process. And in this transition, as Mary becomes more aware of where we're at, she'll be able to provide us some of the direction we need in order to address that issue, as well as address where we need to go financially to meet the needs of the students academically. So
when would we expect to see something like that?
I'm sorry?
When would we expect to see something like that? A plan, or a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 2-year plan?
I can't tell you that at this moment in time.
Well, I guess I'm thinking this is a significant amount of money that we would have to have in budgets, and if we're doing 5-year out, planning financially as well as capital and everything else, I would think that this would be the most important thing that we have to have in that.
This is certainly one of the most important things that we need to address, and I know we're working towards that. The overall issue is we've been here since January 23rd with 100 snow days in the middle between now and then, and just trying to juggle and certainly not an excuse. I just want you to be aware that it is a priority for us. She's been given 3 priorities. The one is getting the curriculum documented and get the processes and procedures in place. So the other one is getting a handle on the assessment, and the third one is data related. So we need to start using and making decisions related to data. So everything that she's doing is relating to those 3 areas, and we think that over time we'll be able to come back and give you an idea when that timeline will be. But as of right now, we're in an exploratory phase, and we need to just give her that time to dialogue with teachers, because we can't, as administrators, just with a stroke of a pen, make these decisions. We need the cooperation, we need the guidance and the understanding of what's really happening in the classroom with our teachers. Because remember, the Thackton School District has been doing a wonderful job with regards to turning out some of the best and brightest. So the last thing we need to do is have someone like Dave Zerbe or Mary Katona come in and make a sweeping change without gathering the input necessary to get it done right. And get it done with an idea and an eye on the use of technology and where things are going in the future. So those are the discussions that we're having, and we're having those with teachers, but it takes time. It's not one of those things that I will rush into, and I don't recommend the board pressure us to run into that. I just think it's give us the opportunity to let Mary get her feet wet. We'll have the dialogue necessary to move this thing forward. But I do appreciate the fact that you guys are in tune with and focused on this particular issue, because it is important to all of us.
Yeah, I don't think the board's trying to rush or put pressure on you guys, but I think what you see is that there is a real interest from the board in this, both from an educational standpoint and a financial standpoint. So if you guys, as you guys are working through it, if you just keep us up to date, because there's a bunch of ramifications that I can think of that I just don't know the answer to, and maybe there's opportunities like having children opt out of physical books. If they have their own iPads, they can come and they can use that. So these are just things that we're all interested in, I think, from my conversations with everyone. So just keep us as up to date as you can.
Great,
Appreciate
point.
it.
Any other questions on 611? On to 612, programs at the high school course proposals. We're actually proposing 2 courses, and we'll provide the text description of the second one. The first one is listed here for you. Reading strategies and study skills for grades 9 through 12. Length of course is 1 year and meets the mods per cycle with a credit value of a half credit. Do you want to talk about that one for a second?
Sure. And this is something that is first of all just meant to help students that still may be falling behind a little bit in some of those literacy skills that are going to help them really in all areas. But also a kind of a motivator, I guess, toward getting us here is with the Keystone exams, students who do not pass or not proficient on the Keystone the first time that they take it, then take it again. In between there, they need remediation. What we would like to do is, if we can get students as they're coming into the high school, and we can see based on test scores and other local assessments and that maybe they could benefit by a course like this, to schedule them for this class. Maybe get them, they won't take the literature Keystone until their sophomore year, so maybe get them right off the bat so that when they go in, they will be better prepared, they will have a better chance at passing that exam when they take it. If they don't, they can, be scheduled again in terms of remediation to get, to focus on whatever skills they might still be lacking in, and it would be basically for those students who are having those difficulties yet. There are no costs involved with this course because we basically have the materials that we need. We have the Read 180. The teacher would also be taking, like from possibly from some of the content areas, helping students with their, understanding of reading nonfiction text according to the standards. So, again, we're trying to sort of catch them before they fall as they come in.
So is this like an extension to the Read 180 Like just taking it further
Well, it's
with the study skills?
The Read 180 doesn't really give them study skills. This could help them with that. Yes, I guess you could say that.
Okay.
Something.
Because I knew we had some kind of remedial type of, because
Yes.
we had a board presentation on it.
Yes.
Connie McLucky, I think, was involved.
Can I just want to comment? I think this is wonderful. I'm so glad that you're doing this. The one thing I want to ask a question of or a suggestion is the study skills section of it. Are the children that may not potentially be remedial, is there an option for them to potentially take this to
strengthen their
strengthen
skills.
those study skills? Maybe not necessarily, but they're falling behind, but they just want to be... Not all kids know how to study. And if we can teach them those skills, especially, as they move more rigorous schedules.
And a variety of skills too, because not everything works for every kid. And I mean, we're going through that.
Wonderful.
I mean, we're going through that right now with my son, and just coming up with a set of study patterns that we can use as he goes along, and just finding ones that work and ones that don't. It's like hit or miss, and it's difficult because we know there's better ways out there. We're just not in tune to them yet.
I was actually having a discussion a little bit about this in the midst of a larger conversation when I came to meet with a teacher and Mrs. Page at Arcola a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about some of the things that they're doing, like in 7th and 8th, to reinforce, to teach students some study skills and reinforce them right along the way. So, that's probably something that goes well beyond this course even, and maybe something to really be looking at, like from 7 through 12, or even before that. I mean, and I think all along the way, teachers are giving little hints here and there, little ideas, but that's different than doing something very deliberately.
Right.
And so that's probably a conversation that we need to be having about that.
I just think that would set us apart from other schools that don't, we teach, reading, writing, arithmetic, social studies, whatever, but that is something that will take them through life. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
And then the second item that's not listed there, and I do apologize for that, but we were actually finalizing some of the finer details of this particular program. And this follows along the same types of lines as item 1, but item 2 will be the math remediation program. If you want to give the right title for that, I didn't write it down.
Well, outside of what they would do during the school year, what the high school is looking at doing is putting into place eventually for all of the Keystone areas what they're calling a summer boot camp. And they actually spoke with a couple of the neighboring districts that already have something like this in place, North Penn being one. And this would be something whereby they would look at the students' scores, Keystone scores from the previous year, identify the students that were not proficient, and then invite them to come in for like 10 days in July. It would be a total of about 25 hours of instruction in that area. And then take the Keystone again. They're being offered in the summer. Take it then at the end. That way, there wouldn't be as many students who would need the remediation when they go back, to school. They could go into other classes. They could focus on what they want to focus on. So the idea was to start this with math this summer because our current 9th graders, that's the only one that affects them right now. Eventually, all 3 will before they graduate. They have to be proficient. But this is the one we wanted to get the students from 8th grade that weren't proficient, get the 9th grade students that we find out aren't proficient, and get them into this for the end of the summer. There would be a tuition cost to the students of about $150. Of course, free and reduced lunch would not be expected to pay. The high school administrators ran through the numbers and all. And if we offer transportation, and the numbers all came out exactly as they have on here, which is about 20 students, and we had 2 teachers so that we could really break down those classes for individualized instruction. We would fall just slightly short, that is if the free and reduced lunch, if we had the full third. So but there are options with that. We could do just one teacher, we could not do transportation. There are some different options there to make up for that. The little curveball that we got thrown this afternoon is that the state sent out an email that they are now looking at possibly, and it almost looks like probably, giving an extension to the Keystone window like they did to the PSSA, which on one hand sounds like, well, that's great because now we have more time to teach. The problem is that any extension, whether it's a 1 week or a 2 week extension, is going to mean that we are not going to have these results to be able to do anything useful. So right now we're kind of at a standstill with them. Again, the plan would be to start with math this year. That's really what we would like to do. But if this happens, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. But we'd like to start with it, like I said, about 20 students this year, and then probably next year take it to literature and biology as well.
So we plan on providing you the details of this particular math remediation summer boot camp electronically, and then in addition to that, have it on the agenda for the 25th and ask that you would approve it if indeed we're able to run it. Because we certainly wouldn't run it if we don't have scores and we're not sure who's proficient and who's not. So we're just trying to prepare in advance to meet this based on the information we received today from the Department of Education.
Is this going to be voluntary?
Yes.
Is it voluntary?
Yeah, they won't. Yeah. I mean, there'll be, obviously, specific students would be invited to come to it.
But it's totally
but
voluntary.
they don't have to.
Right.
I mean, it would obviously be, to their advantage if they're able to do it.
Okay. All right.
It will allow the child then to take additional courses and/or electives within their regular schedule during the school year. If they choose not to attend the boot camp, then they may be subject to, for us to mandate them to attend additional remediation in order to get them prepared for the Keystones and pass for graduation. So it's kind of an option that we feel is appropriate for students that want to take advantage of this so that they can continue on to the schedules of that they would normally have during the school year. Next item I have is policy 613. And I know it says first reading here because at our last board meeting when it was up for second reading and finalization, the board asked us to take this back to the policy committee. The policy committee did review this item, and we agreed that the item and the policy itself was congruent with what we believe is appropriate under the PSBA recommended code of conduct that we approved back in December, and is consistent with the previous 011 policy. However, we believe, as part of our discussion, that the recommendation to take it back to the policy committee was more of an operational, meaning whether or not we were complying or being consistent with the intent of that policy. And we felt that that's an operational item, not necessarily a policy item, and therefore what I'm recommending is that when we go to the 25th, that this will be changed from first reading to second reading, and we will approve the policy as is because it would have gone through all the steps necessary to be an approved policy. And therefore, if we have issues related to how we are following the policy, then board members or members of the public or whomever should speak up and make that known. So I will make that change unless there's any objection to doing so. The next item, 614, policy deletions. The committee also reviewed many other policies. Most of them, I believe there were 8 or 9 total. Most of them had additional changes required. Therefore, the only other one that we're going to be bringing on the 25th at this time is the electronic devices policy, and that is one that we will be asking for you to delete. On page 4 of the acceptable use policy, policy 815, we identify all the items that were previously detailed in the electronic devices policy, and the most recently approved acceptable use policy dictates how those devices can be used within the district. So we're asking for that policy, as the committee has approved, to delete that. Item 615, other nomination as representative for Montgomery County Intermediate Unit to complete a 3-year term ending June 30th. I believe this is on the agenda because we agreed to have Mr. Phillips finish the year due to the vacancy of Howard Jones, who had been elected to this position. And all we would need to do is then approve a person or Mr. Phillips, whomever, to continue the final year of that term. The school calendar, I can tell you that the school calendar has been provided, and it is a calendar that reflects a basic change of the year. So the format is similar to that we approved a year ago, that was in place to start September 1 of the 13-14 school year. We've done many things to see how we can best utilize some other available time regarding professional development and building in additional snow days. But in every aspect of the change, we came up with issues. So we're recommending at this time that we stay with the format that we had from last year and just move that for an additional year. Okay?
Well, can we put something in there about what if we get another year with all these snow days?
No, we're not doing that. No snow.
I know. Well, I'm saying if we plan for it, it won't happen. So, I mean, can we put in a plan that the same thing could happen as this year, where the in-service days get moved to the end, or we
I'll
have
vote on
something?
anything that will prevent snow.
I'll leave it up to Dave. You figure it out.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I'm just asking a question.
You gotta run the-
Just
Yeah,
like
the
to
question,
answer.
I mean, it's a legitimate question based on what we've experienced this year, and I can just say that, it would be my recommendation that we approve the calendar as I've presented it, and then we address the issue as it's coming to us. We may, there's no right or wrong answer to this. We could make a million adjustments to that and build in additional snow days and have now make adjustments back and impact our families in unintended ways. So I guess I'm suggesting that it seemed like we had an opportunity here to fix the calendar at the right times. And not necessarily would I in the future do the exact same thing. We had some serious discussions about the March 12th in-service professional development program. We are still up against some significant deadlines, and we believe that we can meet them with some other adjustments that we're making administratively. But come next year, we may not be in the same position to adjust the same types of days based on other circumstances that might be before us. So right now, I think it's probably best for us to stay with what we're recommending here so that we can start allowing our organization to start planning for next year. This is, our people for facilities use and all kinds of things are waiting for this schedule to be approved, and I think it's appropriate to approve it as it's presented. And certainly we'll be working the simple dialogue is this: the associations are willing to work with us as issues like this come up again, and so the dialogue has been appropriate, and it was only with their help that we were able to move this process forward this year. Commencement date, we will be bringing to you the commencement date for the high school class of 2014. I want you to be aware that we did send out an email through the Home and Schools to try to gather an opportunity to get their input. We backtracked on that and are then going to communicate with all the senior families electronically and allow them to weigh in on some of the options for the location. The location of graduation, the fact that we have an anticipated field project that will displace the graduating class, the date will be impacted by the location. And so, for example, if we choose to use the Oaks Convention Center, the only available date would be Saturday, June 14th. If we choose to use the North Penn School District outdoor facility, we would choose the Thursday, the 12th, and a rain date of Friday, the 13th. And if we choose to do the indoor graduation at the high school, we would choose to do the 12th. And there are other limitations to all those choices. We'll make them available to the parents. We're asking them to give us their opinions, so at least we have some of their input into this process.
We'll have that before we're asked to vote on the date?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Online, I didn't look at it yet, I saw your email, but are there costs associated with these options?
Yes, they are.
And
Yes, there are. Yep. We're not going to be sharing those particular costs and with the public. We want to know what their choices are, and then we can come back to you in light of their recommendations and information associated with the cost. Anything else on that item? On to other non-voting items for discussion. Capacity enrollment study. I just want everyone to be aware that as we discussed in the Finance Committee meeting, that I am working, and I hope to be able to provide some information here at the April meeting, talking about enrollment and capacity as it exists today, and how that, the decisions that as a board we would may need to make into the future related to those decisions. Any questions on that?
Yeah. We did the enrollment study back for the PlanCon B for Skyview. I'd like to know what those numbers were, what we projected our increase was going to be, and also what the actual is and the deficit for our students. Also, how many square foot of building we increased with Skyview, classrooms, how many classrooms we increased by, and how many total square foot.
Isn't that part of the report that you're putting together?
Well,
Total classrooms.
Well, part of that is, but square footage. I'm not getting into square footage. I mean,
Yeah, I don't
it doesn't provide. We under PlanCon regs, it defines the minimum square footage of a classroom, and we have other requirements based on whether it's a regular ed classroom or special ed classroom for square footage and the number of students in a classroom. But I can provide the square footage, but I don't know how to calculate square footage and
well, okay,
I don't see the significance
it doesn't have to do with square footage.
Okay.
Right?
But the other items I can provide you.
Number of classrooms as far as whether it's special ed or a regular classroom.
Our current use of the facility is probably the most important piece of information that you'll need. Why I say that is because PlanCon documents are designed to maximize the return on the reimbursements. However, the way we use it today may not necessarily be similar to where it was originally planned. So, for example, a classroom in Skyview where you may have been able to fit 30 student desks now may only have 22 student desks because there's a table in the back with 5 computers. And then there's another table on the side that has other materials for instructional purposes. So the way the rooms are laid out and the way that we utilize the classrooms today are maybe a little different than what was originally what the PlanCon documents say. So my plan is to bring you what the PlanCon documents say, as well as what our current usage is and how we use them, so that we can see a realistic picture of what that information provides for you.
Are you
If I
going
could just add to
to
that.
look at schools individually as far as usage, or how extensive is your look at this?
I think what I need to do is get you the 100-foot picture initially, and then as we have discussions, if you feel that we need a little bit more detail on some things, we certainly can continue to work towards that process. But I feel that I have the necessary information now. I want to get that presentation. It takes time. I mean, these are, it's important that everything's right as we present it to you, so that, as we start having dialogue about capacity and enrollment, we're dealing with the consistent understanding of the numbers moving forward.
Well, and one thing, I value your time greatly, and what I'm wondering is there anything out there as far as someone coming in and give us a study that I look at how much we would spend on a study versus how much time you would spend, and it takes you away from everything else?
Jim, if I could just chime in. This came out of the finance meeting, and I had pretty much said the same thing. Let the administration do the work that they're doing, come back with their report, take a look at it, get some sense of what it's all about, get some feel for where we are, but leave open the real option to have someone from the outside do an enrollment and capacity study as well, because it's central to everything that we do in this district, and it's dealing with big dollar amounts, and more information is preferable to less. And
I
that's
agree.
kind of where we are today.
If we see that after we see David's report and he presents it to us, that's something that we feel that we need, and I think at that time we should make the decision.
Yeah,
But let's take a look at David's.
This is something I've always asked for,
Yep.
and
We got you that, and we got that.
You asked for a lot of things.
You got that, Charlie.
And we're gonna get 'em
But you
for
know
you,
what?
Jim.
Here, let me tell you. I went down and I looked at it, and then I sat here through 3 different movies or shows on Friday. And I put my money in, and it was very good, and I was glad to see the outcome.
All right, you good? You good? Okay,
Why,
request?
you gotta go home or something?
Well, I'm just trying to move things along.
Yeah, it's only 8:30.
All right.
About quarter to
Any
9.
other questions
got 4
or
more hours to go.
comments on new non-voting items for discussion? Okay. Number 8, other new business.
I would just like to say something. I've been asked by a number of people who came to see Carousel at the high school who raved about it. They attended a show several days later at Ursinus, which they didn't feel was nearly as good as the one at Methacton. And several days after that, they were at a professional show, and they thought Methacton's show was the best.
Well, that's
Woohoo.
that's great.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
You do a great
It was
job.
also the most expensive, but
You get what you pay for.
that's what I told them.
Times are tough.
I can't concur
You want that turf field, right?
with Brenda's
You gotta pay for it.
comment, but I can tell, because I don't go to many plays other than school plays, so I'm not going to Broadway, so I have nothing to really compare it to. But, I know about performance. Those students were fabulous.
Yes.
As well as here at Arcola when they had the play as well.
Wizard of Oz.
And just amazing. So, what I think what I'll do is I'll send an email to each of you, and if you so care to, please share those comments that you find with the coordinators of those plays. So I'll send you the email who those contacts are. That way you can share with them, because I think that would be really important. Because it's really important to the whole culture of our community and to the number of students that come out and parents that come out to support that. I mean, the audience is just awed.
They packed the house.
It was packed, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's great. Thank you. Other new business? Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, I have the tickets for the Education Foundation, Art Corks and Forks, with me. So they're $40 a piece if you buy them on your own. They are, if we have 6 of us here at least buy, they're $30 a piece. So I have them with me. If anyone would like to write me, the school a check.
Ooh.
School a check.
So many things wrong
I
with
do
that.
have them. I meant to say. Anyway, and if you want to bring someone with you, I can get you more tickets. April 7th.
Great. Other new business?
I have a question. As I read it, I think you had talked about your survey, and we're coming close to the end of your entry plan. And so could you talk a little bit about how that information gets synthesized and distributed, and how you're going to let us know the outcome?
Sure. I think, where I'm at right now is I'm still going, as you know, there's a lot of open-ended, well, there were 4 open-ended questions. those 4 open-ended questions, I have to read through all the items, and I'm categorizing them, in lack of a better term, into buckets of information, of points that I think are important for the district and important for you as board members to understand. And so once I get through that process, I plan to then start bouncing some of that information back off of our administrative team through that. And then through that process, I will be organizing a group of what we're calling our, Angela, what's it called?
Focus group.
Our focus group. We've had different renditions of the name of it, but it's individuals from within the Methacton community that are not directly tied to the district as employees, I mean board members or whatever. And it's a matter of bouncing some of those ideas and concepts off of them and understanding, is my interpretation or my understanding of the data important for us to then take back to you as a board and to the community to drive a vision for the future. So the timeline on that, I intended to have that done by the end of March. I think that's one of the time frames that I think I'm off target on that just a little bit, because we had to push the survey back to meet some of the requirements for getting students to take the survey. And they took, how many student surveys did we have?
Over 1,000.
So we had quite a few, and that was only from high school through 8?
It was grades 8 to 12.
8 to 12. So, there's quite a bit of data that we still need to go through. So Angela and I are going through that, and we hope to be able to share that with, maybe in a month or two. But I'll continue to keep you updated on that, because I think it's important for us, to, have that information and then use that appropriately to start making some of our decisions.
Other new business? Still on the agenda. Okay, as Mr. Phillips reminded me, it's time for courtesy of the floor. Any public comment, courtesy of the floor?
I got tickets for this show here. John Andrews, Lower Providence. Number of short items. I can't swear that I'll do it in 1 minute and 59 seconds, but you've got the clock going. There's mention on tonight's agenda about the calendar for the next school year, and I'd like to reiterate that you have the only calendar that I know of that doesn't mention the name of any holiday. I was looking on the calendar for some other school district today, and they even had St. Patrick's Day as a regular school day. I know we're not all Irish here, but I think it's important for the kids to know something about our culture, namely what is a holiday. With regard to the assessment comments about the Wawa, that might not be a big win in that 2 of the 3 Wawas in Lower Providence Township will be closing. With regard to the MESPA contract that you vote on next week, you voted on a tentative contract for the teachers in the fall, and apparently that's still unsettled. When you use the word tentative here, does that mean that there's something unsettled with this contract? And there's still no mention of how the decrease in enrollment is affecting the size of the teaching staff, which affects the salaries, and it affects PSERS, and it affects taxes. I think last year there was a requirement that the retirees speak up by the end of February. If this year they speak up by the end of July, I think that's lousy. I don't know whether there's any date or not, but with regard to graduation, there was mention of having it inside in the high school. My recollection is that the auditorium here at Arcola is far larger than the auditorium at the high school, so I'm a little confused. At the Finance Committee meeting last week, Mr. Whiteleather quoted the same figures on an improvement in the amount to be made up by taxes by about $880,000. And someone asked a question last week, well, then what would be the tax increase? And I think you said 2.4%, but I disagree with that. I think it would be around 3%. And relative to tax increase, PDE has a report on their online saying, thank you. PDE has a report online saying that of the 500 school districts, 311 of them are living within the tax index. For some of them, it's 3%, whereas for us, it's 2.1. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment courtesy of the floor? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. All those in favor? Let's see someone vote against that one day. Stand adjourned. Thank you very much. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you.